Let's meditate for about 10 minutes. Check your posture. Take a few deep breaths. Inhale through the nose. Exhale through the nose. With each breath, fill the whole body and look for any tension and breathe into that tension, and on the exhale, let it go. And we'll just start with watching the breath. Now, I want you to consider your own life, your body, your mind, your thoughts, your actions, and its whole history. The decisions you've made, regrets you've had, and everything that's brought you to this point, here and now. And regard this collection of phenomena, this person, with kindness. And forgiveness for anything you may perceive that you've done wrong, or anything you may regret. You made those decisions because of who you were at the time and the thoughts you had at the time. Now consider those who are close to you, your family members, people you live with, your good friends. And think of these people in the same way, with the same kindness, the same forgiveness. The same allowing for their lives to be as they are, just as your life is as it is. Now consider somewhat abstractly all the millions of people, billions of people, living and deceased, wherever they may be, and consider them with this same allowance, this same kindness, this same forgiveness. Now think of somebody specific who you may feel has harmed you in some way, or who you consider to be a foe or an enemy, or just somebody who you don't care for very much. Think of anybody like that and consider them in this same light, this same allowance to be as they are. Forgive them for whatever they have done. Finally, consider all beings in this light. Those present and imagined, human, non-human, wherever they may be. Let's wish them all happiness, all peace. All love.
Thank you, Matthew. So when we sent out the topic, we sent out a few questions with the topic. And hopefully you've read the first one at least, because we want to start the discussion off with whoever wants to share. What is your fundamental or foundational value that guides your ethics, your morality, your behavior? What is, in a single sentence, what is it that is your foundational source of morality that guides you?
Are you asking us to respond now?
I am.
There's a philosopher named Kant. Most of you probably have heard his name. And he had this, I think he was maybe engaging, I don't know where it came from, but there's this thing called the Kant's categorical imperative. It's like his moral rule. And this is what it is. This one single thing. And his rule was, and I thought this way before I heard it. And then I thought, oh, perfect. Someone's, categorized it. Act as you would like to see all people act in all regards, whether it's the environment or how you are with other people or money, whatever. The categorical imperative is like, whatever it is, act as you would like to see everybody act.
That's
It's kind of a twist on the golden rule, sort of.
Well, since you say that, I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'll just say that the golden rule, do unto others, is actually a twist on where I think it actually came from, which was the Jewish scholar Hillel, and there's a little bit of a story where I won't tell the whole story. Essentially, some kid, he's studying in the plaza, and some kid comes up to him and says, teach me your whole Torah while I stand on one foot. Like, and actually in Israel now, it's a Hebrew phrase. If you want the fast version of something, you say beregel echad, on one foot. Like, give me the 1 foot version. And Hillel said, do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. The rest is commentary. Now go study. That's the story. And I thought about that. Like, I like that version better than the Jesus one, because it's easier to not do bad, because it's more clear what isn't bad. Good is this amorphous thing. We try and be good and do good, but you know what you shouldn't do. And I like the Hillel version better.
There is also there's also the issue of, if you love others as you would love yourself, there is also the issue, if you don't love yourself, now you have a problem, so this also can come up. Yeah.
They sent you Tommy Tiernan, that Irish comedian, and he uses that in his bit. Did you get it from him?
No.
he says, well, what if you suffer from low self-esteem?
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
having myself been somebody who in the past didn't love myself enough, I think that's where it came from. But yeah, obviously that's kind of can be an issue. But I think if you take the spirit of all these things, that's, I think you can't go wrong.
Let's leave space for others to say what their guiding moral principle is.
It's a really big question. So I have to admit I didn't think about it ahead of time. Um, but I mean, there's so many places my mind goes. So I guess basically, um, to be authentic and honest, and I, I mentioned it before. I play guitar every morning, and I have mantras that I play, and one mantra I play is to be kind and strong, and so and wise. And when I say wise, it's just really trying to follow the wise teachers that have gotten me to this place. So I guess honest and follow the wisdom that I've been shown.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I like I like be strong. That's an interesting element because yeah, I think sometimes it's needed to to carry out good action. You know,
Yeah,
so
it also takes strength to be soft.
well, that also.
It takes strength to be kind, and
Yeah,
so
that's what I mean. That's what I
yeah.
mean.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
certainly strength to be honest.
Yeah, yeah.
I would add love, be loving, act lovingly, come from love, walk in love, fundamentally.
Nice, thank you.
Can't go wrong with that.
I,
Liz?
I, I was gonna say I do kind of like the original golden rule as do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I like the I like the positive versus the don't do because it's more of a reflecting on reflecting on deliberate love and attention or kindness. So taking care that you would treat someone with the kindness that you would expect to be treated with, or
Or hope
treating
to.
that, yeah, hope to be, or just even the paying attention that you would like in your life, or those kind of things. So I think the golden rule is pretty golden.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. It has that proactive element of uh, actively considering what can I do. That's that's
Anybody else want to weigh in? I'm going to throw in a second question, which I assume that no one really paid attention to those 7 questions I sent. The last one was what, something like, what are the moral challenges that you struggle with the most? So we asked what guides you, and then where do you think you fall short?
For me, it's really in my mind. Um, I got to say, I behave pretty darn well. My mind, I'm really trying to work on purifying it. That's really where I'm at, because a lot goes on in there that isn't that pure. And I'm not judging myself around that, but I'm really trying to refine it.
mm.
So that's kind of what comes up for me when I hear the question. It's just that inner world and trying to purify it.
So is that thoughts you have that are sort of reactive, judgmental? I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Yeah, they're very egocentric, objectifying people.
Mm,
People, I won't get into detail because I don't want to embarrass myself.
yeah.
But it's all the thoughts that I think that are not uncommon to have. Um, and so it's it's trying not to feed them when they come up, to notice them and to let them go and get my mind into a better place
Mm.
quickly.
Quickly. Yeah,
Thanks, David.
Yeah, I used to, I told Bruce this when I was younger, when I was in college. I think I had some exposure to um, the Buddhist idea of right action and right this and right. I think Bruce will talk about it later, the eightfold path or whatever. And I put it to myself, right thought, right speech, right action, and they're in that order. And the thought is the most difficult one, I think. It's um, the most sort of reflexive or automatic or spontaneous. It's just happening all the time. And yeah.
Your answers are going to inform what Matthew talks about. So I encourage if anyone else, yeah, has anything to say, this would be a great opportunity.
Well, I was gonna say that on that first question, I really seem to be staying also with this idea of authenticity and kindness. That was what was kind of filtering out of kind of the options, that was the strongest. And I would say it's also the challenge. This kindness I see where I'm not kind, especially I see that most clearly with my wife when there's judgment. And so it's that reactivity kind of acting out maybe a thought like we're talking about here and and then also with I guess the authenticity, um brushing over. That's kind of what's been a bit of my practice, I feel like recently, is to really be as honest as possible with myself about what is happening, what I'm feeling, and how I may be kind of hiding something. Something's hiding a little bit. I'm not being 100% honest with what's going on because I don't want to maybe show some anxiety or fear or judgmental
Hmm.
ways. So it's kind of interesting how they working together, those two positives and negatives, so to speak, or challenges and goals. Yeah.
Yeah, authenticity is an interesting one. It reminds me of some talks by Alan Watts in which he's talking about Zen and how Zen teachers would try to put this as a challenge to you to be absolutely authentic. And it's a perplexing question. How can you be uh, absolutely authentic? Uh, it I would just say it's a question that naturally leads to self-inquiry, And
How can you ever be inauthentic?
well, this is a likewise a very deep question. Yeah, that leads right to self-inquiry. Does
Or
it?
it,
I
or it,
just want to ask: does anybody struggle with I'm not doing enough in the face of what I see in the world? What more can I do? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel that, you know. And
Mona, you were going to say something.
oh, just in response to the comments about authenticity, it also seems like it's an ever-changing thing because being authentic at 14 is different than being authentic at 44.
thank
You're
God.
almost like you're a whole other being almost.
Yeah,
And so it's not really something permanent unless you have this, um, persistent, pure consciousness um, that you're coming from that place,
yeah,
which to me is true authenticity. It's your true nature.
yeah. I
But
would agree with that.
it doesn't stay the same.
The only thing that stays the same is that.
Yes.
that
But then coming from that, we come from that differently when we're, 6 months old as opposed to 14 or 44. We express that authenticity because that's where we are at those ages.
Yeah.
Oh, if we were only born fully enlightened in samsara.
Well, we would miss the great adventure of samsara.
Yes, we would. The journey.
Yeah.
I'm going to turn it over to Matthew. And what we really hope for today is that as Matthew speaks, if you have any questions, ask them, right in the moment. Otherwise, you'll force me to come up with questions. So, Matthew, when you think about ethics and morality, what do you think is your guiding star?
I would say kindness is the simplest guide to ethics and morality. And I would say that that kindness springs from the all beings, all things being one, being interconnected, being united. But yeah, just kindness. Cultivating it, practicing it, acting it out, and allowing it to guide your life in all the different situations that come up.
What is the basis of kindness, Matthew?
Well, that's what I said. The basis of kindness is the unity of all beings, of all things.
Yes.
Yeah. When shortly before my awakening, I had this practice, and that practice was to go into all situations with nothing other than kindness and curiosity. And this curiosity, I think, is also an interesting element because it involves both kindness and curiosity involve turning your attention away from yourself and becoming interested in what's going on and how those things are unfolding and how you can be with that situation freely and allow kindness to guide your speech and your actions. It's very simple. In fact, I thought about this practice as a kind of intelligent stupidity, like that I would go into situations with a kind of like a childlike view. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how people are going to react. I don't know how I'm going to react. And just allow for that to be without becoming anxious about it or trying to force one thing or another thing to happen or to try to control the situation in some way. So yeah, kindness primarily, curiosity maybe as another element. Curiosity allows you to be empathetic with others as well, to try to see things from their perspective, to understand what they're feeling, why they are doing the things they're doing, why they have the concerns they have. Again, it's all these things. You see, the common underlying factor is turning away from a self-centered view. What am I going to get out of it? How can I control it? Is it going to go good or bad for me? Am I going to feel embarrassed? Am I going to feel good? You know, it's turning away from all of those thoughts and just looking out there and seeing what's there and reacting to it with kindness and curiosity, not worrying about the self at all.
I have a question. And it's a question I'll probably go into, Matt, more in depth at some point, maybe soon. But I'll ask it in a general way here because I think it sort of applies. So we all seem to be on the same page. I think we all are on the same page in terms of doing good, trying to do good, looking to do good, seeing how we can, seeing if we can do enough, whatever. But we live in a complex world, and it's often, or sometimes certainly, difficult to know what is good in this situation. There are many different claims to truth. There are many different claims to how things are. And so you've said to me before, well, I don't have any beliefs. But sometimes I think, well, how can you, in this world, work on doing good without any beliefs? Like, how would you know what good would be in certain situations you may not know? So I've always been curious about that.
I don't know. I just go into the situations with kindness and curiosity and allow, you know, the practice is to try to allow that authenticity to work through you. And so you maybe don't know. You can't know the ends of all things, how everything plays out in the future, whether your action will be good, you know, lead to this outcome or that outcome. You can't know that, but you can know your own kindness. You can know your own intention. And so again, I don't get lost in thoughts about what's going to happen here or there. Just see what is directly in front of you and how you can react, how you can be in that situation with kindness. Some of this involves not thinking about what's 100 miles away or 2 years off or 10 years off or on the other side of the world. It's being present in here and now with that kindness and curiosity, and allowing, you know, in a way, trusting that, you know, all things are unfolding according to a higher power, including you. So this practice is a way of trying to put yourself in accord with that higher power, not to put yourself in the position of being responsible for how everything unfolds in the universe. This is an unrealistic expectation for a for a human being, you know. Yeah.
And yet that position or that perspective takes some courage, you know?
Yeah.
Trust, say.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah. Is you know, that's why it's a practice. You know, that's why it's you know, if you're serious about it, it's not easy because, I mean, on the one hand, it's simple. On the other hand, like you said, it's complicated. The world is complicated. But if you react to the world in a like a simple way, then you know, you can do your part, whatever that part is.
Matthew, do you think kindness is foundational? In other words, when we clear the noise, does kindness arise naturally?
I do think that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think that happiness and compassion, empathy, kindness, all these things spring from the nature of reality itself.
The reason I asked that question is you know, I've said here many times, you've helped me kind of pierce through concepts, and kindness is a concept.
It is.
However, when I really get clear, when I transcend concepts, there's this there's this experience I have
Mm.
that I trust. That's why I trust that I'm spirit because I've experienced it, and there is a kindness energy that comes up naturally. So that's why I just want to get a reality check from you, who
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
Yeah, I think
because it
if
is a concept. The word
it
kindness is
is, of course, it's a concept, but if you sweep it aside, there is an aspect of reality that you can see where this concept comes from. You know why we have this concept. You know, it isn't the concept. It is more like it's more like the nature of how things are. You know, I once heard a description of compassion. Compassion is like reaching behind and adjusting your pillow while you're asleep. You know, it's like the way things happen. Like reality itself is compassionate. You know, if it weren't, then uh, things wouldn't unfold the way that they do. You know, you can see that um, if you act um, if you act in accord with reality, uh, things go well for you, and there's less trouble. If you act at odds with reality, suffering arises. And you may perceive this suffering of a bad thing, but it's actually the universe's way of helping you align yourself with reality, you know, helping to bring you to a better place. It's a way of guiding you, you know. Don't, that's the wrong way, you know. Go over here. And so that is the compassion of reality itself. Sometimes it's hard love, though, so it's not very pleasant when we go through it. Yeah, but yeah, I do think it's foundational, fundamental, and I think if you look at the all the various religious and spiritual traditions, you know, they tend to agree on this point. Why? Because it's something very deep, very fundamental to consciousness.
When I think of kindness, I sort of blend in three other concepts with it. There's the wisdom aspect, there's the love aspect, and I think kindness and love go kind of hand in hand. And then there's an action aspect that if kindness is just a feeling and it doesn't have any movement towards results, it's might not be quite fully blossomed kindness yet.
It's like unrealized kindness, you know?
Or the kindness in a seed still.
Yeah, yeah. People have probably felt this. Has anyone, you feel a impulse to do something kind, but then you talk yourself out of it or something. Has anybody had this experience? Yeah.
No, no, no.
No, Bruce, you're the only one, Bruce. And and so that's a practice to listen to that voice, to challenge yourself to carry out those actions, and then to see how does that go. You know, Mona.
Yeah, it's just pausing me to contrast kindness also with unkindness, and how if you're in a group situation, um, well, two circumstances. If you're with a very, very young child who's been growing up in a loving environment, it's uncanny how much kindness lives in that little child,
Mm.
whether it's a ladybug or a human being, their nature is to be kind.
Mm.
But also, if you're in an adult group situation and somebody does do an unkind act, I have a sense that the whole group feels it, the whole group. And then if somebody actually steps up and counters it with kindness, the whole group recognizes that was countering the unkindness. It's like you don't even have to think of it as a concept. It's just like a sixth sense of what kindness and what unkindness looks like.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple. Everybody can get into complexities, like if somebody's in a wheelchair, is it really kind to open the door for them when really they, want to do it themselves?
You could tie yourself
Yeah,
into knots over things like that.
yeah, you could really spin a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do agree that I think there's a real natural fundamentalness about it.
Why do you think, Mona, people do unkind things?
Conditioning.
Yeah.
All you have to do is have, like a big brother who wants his way all the time. It's difficult conditioning.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. I was the oldest brother.
Well, you could also say a big sister, but it's a conditioning experience. Yeah.
Matthew, I wrote down that you said if you act in accord with reality, things go well for you. Are things? I don't think things are going too well for the people in Gaza. Are they not acting in accord with reality?
Ultimately, no one cannot act in accord with reality. Everyone's acting in accord with reality. So, sometimes trying to understand something on one level or in one situation, it doesn't apply to other situations. And I would say that this is one of those cases. So it's kind of a separate discussion. Of course, they're acting in accord with reality. No one cannot act in accord with reality. Yeah. But reality includes delusion, for example. And delusion leads to suffering. Now, it may not be their delusion. It could be somebody else's delusion that leads to their suffering. But any delusion leads to suffering. And the larger that delusion is, the more outrageous it is, the more violent it is, the more suffering it leads to. And it leads to suffering in all directions. So, a lot of people criticize this idea of karma or have an argument with it as if when something bad happens to you, it's all your fault. Well, that's not true. Karma goes in every direction. Somebody else's delusion may be causing your problems, or it could be yours too. It is delusion on all different levels that causes suffering in all different directions. And when I say not acting in accord with reality, that's really what I'm talking about, is just the tendency for human beings to fall into various delusions that lead to suffering, their suffering and the suffering of others.
Did that satisfy you, Barry? No.
What, do you have a follow-up question?
Well, maybe it went over my head. I wrote down that you said if you act in accord with reality, things go well for you. If you don't, suffering arises to bring you to a better place. And then you said everyone is acting in accord with reality.
And these two
So
things, yeah, no, you're right. These two things are two different statements. So when I said, if you act in accord with reality, things go well for you, this is just like a colloquial way of saying, if you
Align yourself.
if you align yourself with it's actually easy if you look at it the other way. If you're not aligned with the way things are, you're going to have problems. If there's a 100-foot cliff in front of you and you walk off it as if it weren't there, you're going to have a problem. That's basically what I'm saying with regard to that earlier statement, is just the sort of cause and effect at play in our life. And that we can do things which are not in our best interests, and because they are not aligned with the way things really are. And you can scale that up and say that's basically what delusion is doing things that are not aligned with the way things really are. So if all beings are one being, if we are all one human family, we're all interconnected, then if we act in a way that is contrary to that, it's going to cause suffering. Our own and the suffering of others as well.
I'm going to test if this is another way of saying what you're saying, Matthew. Because reality is unity, we can never be outside of that and can never act outside of that oneness. However, there is also duality. And within duality, all these problems can arise because there's the appearance of intentionality and ego-driven delusional behaviors that cause suffering.
Yeah, although I don't know, that's complicating the matter somewhat, perhaps. Yeah, I don't think you really have to go into duality and non-duality, and I think it's to understand that actions that are counter to reality, the way, I don't even want to say reality, just the way things are going to cause problems. for you and others.
Matt, I think you and I have talked about this pretty extensively because it was a huge hurdle for me to understand bad and good and the being aligned with good and bad. Um, my personal mantra for trying to live well is live in love, and I think if everything is aligned with that, then you've got more or less smooth sailing. That's what you're saying, I think, and you can correct me at any point, of course, but in my opinion, what you're saying is that if you live in accord with reality, if you embrace reality and you surrender to it, and you're just accepting of that reality, good or bad, then you're not going to suffer as much. And so when you're disillusioned, the good things in life pull you toward awakening, and the bad things in life push you toward awakening. And so, if you have bad experiences, then that's disillusionment. That leads to disillusionment because you reject those bad things and selfishly seek the good things, of course. Um, and that's also disillusionment. When you have disillusionment with the bad or the good in the dualistic world, then you're going to suffer, and unfortunately, a lot of other people are going to suffer too. Is that
Yeah, I think that's well said. Yeah, both the good and the bad can, obviously we try to avoid the bad and we try to seek out the good, but both come and go, and both have their own form of suffering. If you seek the good, the form of suffering that comes about is the good passes away, or whatever it is that you desire passes away. The good situation, the whatever it is that you want to be happening passes away, and this can lead to disillusionment for sure. Yeah, ultimately, I would say all things that are happening, all things that have ever happened, obviously are happening in accord with the way things happen. And I would say ultimately, it's good.
Can I ask a question? It's a little bit of a pivot because we're talking about morality and ethics, and I just want to pivot to ethics. It kind of fits with the conversation right now. I mean, so a teacher of mine taught me a long time ago that you have your moral principles. However, you shouldn't live like an automaton because sometimes those principles don't fit the circumstances because they're situational ethics. Um, so, I may have a moral principle of not harming anyone. However, if let's say I don't have a gun, but let's say I have a gun just for safety, and someone breaks in my house and they're going to kill my wife, and I pull the trigger and I kill that person, or he kills my wife, and maybe I can, if I'm conscious enough, maybe I can pull the trigger in love and say, I'm sorry, I have to kill you because you're going to kill my wife. I think that's probably the most noble thing. But can you speak a little bit to situational ethics and because it leads into the complications that we're talking about a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you try to think everything out, there's no end to it. And this is why I think people need like a guiding principle, like kindness or whatever, that is overarching rather than all very specific because of this problem. The children, I think, need something very specific. They need to be told what's what they should do and what they shouldn't do. But as we get older, I think, our practice should be to understand at a deeper level why those are the do's and don'ts, and to allow for that underlying truth, that underlying reality, to guide our actions seamlessly or authentically in all circumstances. And so if somebody's in your house about to kill your wife, you don't have time to think through it. You're just going to react. And then you're going to have to live with whatever the outcome comes about. And so since in a situation like that, you don't have time to react, what's important is that we have a practice of action that doesn't rely on discursive thought, that our actions can arise spontaneously within situations in a way that is good, kind, or of benefit to others in this situation. And I agree with you, for example, about violence. I think ultimately is in the mind. And if that mind could be cured, then violence would cease to come out of it. A lot of people think violence is the action, but what is the root of the action? It's some thought, it's some delusion, it's some hate, it's some anger, it's some
Justification.
Justification. Yeah. Some grievance. Those are all the violence coming into being in the mind. And I think of course, the outward practice is to don't do the bad things, but the deeper practice is to cure the mind, to purify the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be fair to say then that the overlying principle or foundational, guiding principle, be it kindness or whatever, should have as part of it selflessness? Because I'll just ask it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's, like I said, I think that's where it comes from. When I say the underlying kindness comes from the unity of all beings, that's selflessness. The unity of all beings is non-particular, it's selfless.
You didn't say it overtly, but I wanted to just to make sure that I had it right.
Would it be fair to say that if I shot and killed that person, that at a fundamental level, I'm shooting myself?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I would see it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's also why it's a terrible thing, even if you have to do it,
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Well, that's something to ponder, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, these are hard questions. The moral landscape is extremely challenging, and I think we have to humble ourselves and look at it as a practice. Because a person can only do what they can do. They have their own conditioning, their own. So it's a practice for everyone, and but my experience has been if you do this practice, it will bear fruit. You know, if you practice kindness, if you practice trying to do the right thing in each circumstance that arises within your life, that will has a transformative effect.
Any more questions or comments for Matthew? Maybe not.
The practice in is always in the context of our life, I would say, you know. And so it's always the immediate, whatever is in front of you. How do you respond to that? And how can you respond to it with kindness and generosity?
I mean, I know because no one else is saying anything. I'll say something. I don't want to, I'm aware when I talk a lot, and so I get self-conscious. But no one's saying anything. I just want to feed what you're saying about curiosity because I think it's great. I
Mm.
mean, if you think about emotional reactions like irritation, frustration, anger, it's such a different flip when you get curious. Instead of getting angry at that person, you get curious about their behavior. It's a whole different platform to experience relational interactions. And I just want to appreciate that you mentioned that because it's a much it feels more foundation, it feels more fundamental. It kind of takes you into that zone of engaging into life as opposed to reacting and pushing back at it. It kind of pulls you in a very there's a kindness about it. So I appreciate you mentioned I appreciate you mentioned those two things together because it's actually very practical when it comes to human interactions, particularly with people that are close to us, like our partners, and that kind of thing. It's much more helpful to get curious than to express anger.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you can ask a question, or and I would say too, although I was putting the focus on turning away from the self, one should also endeavor to be kind to oneself, and to be curious about oneself. Why do I have this reaction? Why do I get upset over this minor thing? Why do I have these thoughts? Why do I react this way? Yeah, I mean, it can be helpful to be curious about those things too, to understand yourself more, your own reactions to things. The clearer you can see those reactions as exactly as they are, conditioned reactions, the less kind of power they have over us.
I've been, I think, always on this topic. I'm always just kind of curious. It feels like when we, when there's enough discussion about kind of non-duality and that it seems like this ethics and morality just kind of comes up automatically, almost like it's kind of like just a reaction to some of those ideas from a certain, I don't know. It's kind of like a backlash almost, you know. And I kind of was thinking about, Matt, your kind of what's the term you've been using for your main teaching? Um, the
You got to tell me.
well, you have this term for the whole view. Oh, I just had it and I can't think, but it's that kind of the snake eating its tail.
Ah,
And I kind of was thinking about how the ethics gets into the selflessness, and how maybe there's someone, a person who has a realization, but then the ethics aren't, we might call their ethics not very moral in some ways. And so, the linkage between those two, and it's, how you have, we've talked about the fact that maybe you can have this realization of non-self, but not a realization that the world is an illusion, you know? And so you can kind of have this half realization. I forgot what terms you've used. Does that ring a bell?
yeah,
Kind of.
yeah, yeah.
I guess I'm always kind of curious about that, and maybe that's a pretty common, theme. You say, "Oh, there's some teacher who's unethical, but seems to be realized,"
Well, I I don't want to get I don't know about that. When I see people who are really unethical, then I would say I would have my doubts as to their realization, and whether it is thorough, because I think that, like, Barry, in your email question, I think you asked something about morality and ethics. Is it a practice, a goal, or a fruit, or an outcome? And I would say it's all of those. It is a practice. It is a goal, and it is also a fruit of insight. So when you see that other people aren't separate from you in a deep way, when you see that their joy is your joy, that their pain is your pain, this brings about compassion. So that's the fruit of insight. And so this ethics and morality runs all throughout the whole spiritual landscape. And in Buddhism anyway, the ethics is the first thing taught. And that's often true, just like, with children and things like that too, like one has to have some kind of grounding in ethics before one pursues, sort of a higher truth. What is the truth about underneath everything that's happening? If you don't have any grounding in ethics, some of the teachings could be problematic for you. Because they lead to non-duality. They're asking you to look beyond dualities, beyond good and evil, and so if you don't have a grounding in ethics, in right thoughts, right speech, right action, the teachings of non-duality could turn you into a monster far before you get anywhere close to realization. And that would be a terrible outcome, for you and for all those around you. And that's why it is important. This is an important topic. I think, to some degree, a lot of the people I talk to, I feel have a fairly good moral ethical grounding. And so maybe that's why I don't talk about it as much. But if somebody came to me who I didn't think had a moral ethical grounding, that would be the first thing that I would be talking to them about. I wouldn't be talking to them about how to realize the ultimate nature of the universe. Like that. It would be completely inappropriate. The advice to give would be to try to help that person find an ethical, moral grounding in a way to behave. And that alone will help improve their life and their experience in their life. In all the various religious and spiritual traditions, I think, there are these two branches, the moral, ethical, love and compassion branch, and the truth branch. And they go together. They're interwoven. If you and this is kind of what I was saying too about acting not in accord with reality. If you're an unethical person, you are unlikely to realize truth, because you will be constantly getting into trouble and getting others into trouble. Your life will be a train wreck. So the first order of business would be to clean that up, to try to straighten yourself out, try to act in accord with some kind of decent moral principles. And so in Buddhism, ethics is first, then concentration. You have to be able to cultivate an ability to focus the mind, and then last is wisdom. But they're all interwoven. Working on ethics, requires mindfulness of how you're thinking, how you're acting, how you're behaving in different situations. So even if you're just focusing on ethics, you're already involving elements of concentration. You have to be mindful of what's going on. And all these things are intertwined.
So it's almost 6:30 and I have to go out tonight. I can either just leave and let people talk. I'm happy to do that, or we can end.
I just wanted to say thank you, Matthew, for taking my jumbled words and making something wonderfully educational, and going into that. And I remembered that total perception
That's
was what I was thinking of.
Yes.
And I feel like it's almost a metaphor for what you were talking about in a certain way,
Yes. Don't leave anything out. That's including morality and ethics. Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. I feel clearer too.
Nice. Great. Thank you, Barry, for bringing this topic up. Thank you. And it's a wonderful discussion. It's a deep topic, and I think it is like I said, a foundational one. So, yeah, maybe I should bring it up more. So I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
So we
David.
end with a prayer. So may we all move towards love and kindness. May we overcome our confusions in our mind and purify our mind. May we find compassion and forgiveness for ourselves and others. And may we move through the world with curiosity. And with all of this, may we return to hope and trust in that total perception, total perfection.
Thank you, Bruce.
Bless you all.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
we do have a topic for our next Zoom meeting already. It's going to be flow. And Matthew and I just had an outstanding talk yesterday as we just set that up. So by a month from now, we'll have a really good Zoom discussion going. So bless you all. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks for joining us. Matthew, again, thank you for your wisdom and your time and your articulate way of responding to all of our questions.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
all.
valuable. Thank you
Thank you so
for this
much.
time.
Hi, Stuart.